Welcome to Transform, Ignite, Disrupt, bringing you interviews and insights covering proven practical strategies to unlock your company's innovation potential. Here's your host, Stephen L. Blue.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to another episode of Transform, Ignite, and Disrupt. You may recall from previous episodes that generally we interview really cool people on this show who have done some really cool things in transforming their organizations and in some cases entire industries. And then they've gone on to ignite change and innovation and then disrupt kind of the world around them for the better. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm really excited today to interview somebody who not only he meets all the criteria for transform, ignite, and disrupt because he transformed an entire industry, and along the way he ignited the passion of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. And his name is Len Pagano, and he's the CEO of the Safe America Foundation, and it was founded in 1994. And it partners with corporate, government, public, and private sector organizations and other nonprofits to save lives by emphasizing safety education and emergency preparedness. Their mission is to be the voice of safety, helping to keep people safe. And they are into like everything that you can think about that would concern you today, from cybersecurity to human trafficking to texting to emergency preparedness and, of course, transportation safety. So Len's an awful busy guy, and he's doing terrific work. And without further ado, let me introduce the guy who started it all 20 years ago, CEO of the Safe America Foundation, Len Pagano. Hi, Len. Hey. How are you?
Good, Steve. Good to hear your voice.
Same here. Welcome to the show. I'm just thrilled to have you on today because you've got a conference coming up in April, which is a major event at, I believe, the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta. Maybe we should talk about that first while we got all our listeners on in the first couple of minutes of the show.
Well, that'd be great. And I will say this, when you look at all the issues today, as you started to describe them, they go from, things that are obviously attuned to safety, transportation, but then you go to these other things that affect human life today, the human trafficking problem, the opioid crisis. And when you think about the top 5 issues that affect life, that's what we want to focus on at the Spring Symposium at the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta. And our goal, of course, is to protect lives.
How can people get more information about that, Len, and even better than that, sign up and come to the event?
Well, we're happy to have them go to our website for the conference. It's Spring to Safety is the shorthand term, springtosafety.org. And, when you think about it, Steve, there's so many people that are looking to come this time thanks to your leadership. And we've got people from California, from London. And when you look at what we're going to try to do, I think the key thing out of this is going to be, excuse me, I'm sorry there. I guess I had a bit of a sore throat. And they got up to, do we have to just keep going, Steve? I'll just keep going.
No, you're fine. Keep going. They'll just cut that out. It's no problem.
Okay. Well, back to when you look at what we're going to be trying to do, it's going to be impacting the whole world. So we're delighted to see people are looking to come from Europe, from Australia, and all over North America. And one of the things we're going to be looking at is to actually start a new safety app. And we're working with a company in Orange County, California called GoWare, and their goal is to help get this app out under the brand name WorldSafe. And our hope is that people that travel, and of course all of the people that have teenage children, will want to have this app because it identifies where there are existing threats or worries so that in real time it can tell you where there is a problem. And after what happened recently in Florida, we know that there's a growing concern by parents of teenagers that they want to make sure their kids are safe in school. So this will be one of the emerging issues that we'll talk about at the Spring Symposium, as well as all the other issues that you'd say are practical safety issues.
Well, that's going to be a big app. I mean, I'm just imagining all of the inputs that have to flow into that thing to identify, where the threats are.
Well, you're right. And, this fellow who's developing it, whose name is Alon Stivy, Alon was in the Israeli army, and he has done a lot of work around active shooters and understands firsthand, some of the issues that have to be dealt with that the average American doesn't, have to deal with every day. So I think the good bit of his background is he's going to share his intelligence through the app, and it'll help all of us be safer. So we're delighted to be his partner, that he wants Safe America to be presenting this for the first time at the conference, showcasing it, and then we're actually going to look at other types of technology, and we're going to look at a potential safety shark tank, which will look at funding sources that can help us bring other new technology to the forefront. Because there's a lot of things. If anybody has watched Shark Tank, you see a lot of ideas out there, and a lot of them are not getting funds. So we're going to see what we can do, working with some of our partners to provide some funds so some of the products that will actually save lives can be on the market.
So the Safety Shark Tank would be kind of like an incubator, and I'm trying to think of whatever that site is that you can go on to raise money.
Exactly, Steve, and we're delighted. We've got some interesting people from places like Texas Tech University, Dr. Rob Duncan, who heads research there and has some incredible connections. We've got people in the Northeast of Philadelphia. Gentlemen, you met Harold Cohen and his senior partner, A.J. Raju. So when we look at all of our connections from east to west, we're going to try to put them together and see if we can't, by November, have our first funding distributed to some of the key products we're going to be focusing on. So, again, the idea, all of this goes back to having a national task force that wants to work on future issues. To premiere it at the Federal Reserve in Atlanta is going to be an exciting venue for people that will be able to come together and do more than just listen. Steve, it's not enough just to, care. You really have to do something. And I think that's why I really am impressed with your leadership through the CEO Network. It's mobilizing people like you're doing on this broadcast, on this podcast. You're getting people to care enough to do something.
Well, that's a good thought. Now, that site again, is at spring2safety or spring4safety.org?
Spring2safety.org. And
spring2safety.org.
Right, and you can sign up there, and if anyone has any questions, of course, you can call our Atlanta headquarters number, 770-973-SAFE, and we'll happily get people signed up. We have a discount for those that groups of 5 or more, and we're expecting already about 150 people, so it should be. And it's interesting, Steve, some of the people coming are not people you would expect. For example, church leaders. Last week I spoke to 150 regional church pastors and ministers, and people from synagogues as well as from mosques. And if you said that all of them had one common denominator, they were worried about their congregations. And so we're talking to General Russell Honore, who's looking to come again and speak, and we've got some new partners that, again, have dealt with active shooter situations and work for the federal government, and we're looking at teaching people what they need to know today. That's the challenge. This is emerging, and that means that it hasn't been thought of before, so people have to learn new things, and that's tough.
Yeah, it is, and as I look at some of the hot button issues in society today, you guys were working on these. Well, as an example, opioid crisis is in the news all the time. Active shooters is in the news all the time. Veterans problems are in the news all the time. But you guys have been working on that stuff for a while now, haven't you?
Well, we have, Steve, and one of the things I feel good about, you can go to some organizations and they're very deep in one topic, but if you go to 4 or 5 topics, they're bound to say, we really don't know anything in those areas. What we're proud of is that we've gone from A to Z horizontally and being able to blend or merge together people like from the CDC who are working on the opioid crisis, then go to another group called Youth Sparks, which is working on the human trafficking. In other words, we can bring to the table some of the best people who are working in all of these areas, and that's something unique. And it's needed because all of these topics we all face. It's you get into your car, you're dealing with transportation safety. You get on the internet, you're dealing with internet safety and cyber risks. And so there's not one of these topics that any of us can really say is outside the range of what we have to deal with every day.
Yeah, and the other thing I like about what your organization does is you shine a light and bring attention to issues that people would normally not think existed. The one that doesn't shock me anymore, I'm afraid, because I've been on your board for a while, is human trafficking. It's like that's right in your own backyard, and when people hear about it, they go, "Oh no, that doesn't happen in the United States, does it?" Well, yeah, it does.
And the thing that the more I get into it, I find out more and more that it's growing in middle-class suburban areas, Steve. It's shocking. It's not just an urban problem, but people in the suburbs. I remember hearing the story of a couple who had trouble paying for their minivan, so they wanted to basically give the rights to have sex with their 14-year-old daughter.
Oh my
to
God.
Isn't that horrible? And
That's
these people now, I mean, they're suburbanites. This is not, some crazy urban, situation.
Yeah.
And to hear stories like that, and then to realize, for example, here's another example. When we hear about how many people are affected across the country in different areas that you would not expect, not just urban areas, but looking at Illinois, Bloomington, Illinois is in a cross-section of interstate highways where people go there to ship other people around the Midwest. And you think, Bloomington, Illinois? That's kind of weird. You wouldn't think of that.
Because that's got a lot. It's a big mall area, very upper middle class to upper class area.
Well, and that's one reason they go there, and they use it as a hub to bring people from, say, the Midwest or the South to different parts like Indiana or, again, Chicago and Detroit. So you think about that. You wouldn't think Bloomington, Illinois is on the map of human trafficking, but it is.
No, we sure wouldn't. Go ahead.
And well, Steve, another example of a new topics, and this is something as you say, we try to look at what's emerging. A lot of people don't realize that the New England states are starting to seriously consider changing the time zone they're in and going to the Atlantic time zone, which would push them 1 hour ahead of New York and Washington, D.C. And think about the impact if you travel to the east from Minneapolis. You'd be looking at 2 time zones, not 1. And so how and what does that impact on travel? And it's bound to have an impact on different business factors. So a lot of people don't realize that New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Vermont are all states now looking at this, and they may consider making this change within the next 2 to 4 years. So I think there are.
Never heard of that.
Well, and again, if you Google, you'll find, as we have, you'll find some interesting stories from the Boston Globe that really are making this look like this could very, very seriously happen. And again, why not have the rest of the country hear this? Because it'll impact all of us in business. You'll have not 3 time zones, then you'll have 4 time zones across the country.
Why do they want to do that? I mean, I don't want to get too deep in that, but is there a short answer as to why they want to do that at all?
Well, there is, and it deals to some degree with safety because they get dark much earlier than people. Yeah. And I mean, think about it this way: Detroit's in the Eastern time zone, and Boston is, I think over 350 miles east. So when you look at the difference of when it gets dark in Boston versus Detroit, it is about an hour's difference in the winter, and that makes it difficult for people. So if it's getting dark at 3:50 in the afternoon, you might like it being dark at 4:50 instead. And that's the factor that's caused them. And it's a safety issue. You think about kids getting home from school. That's why I can see the logic. But the problem is it has an impact on all of us. And it's not just people in the New England states that ought to be aware of this. And that's why we're looking at, sharing this kind of a story, because every year, every time you look, there are some new factors emerging. And that's true, for example, after last year with disasters. If you look at what happened in Texas, Florida, and Puerto Rico, the federal government has really begun to realize that they cannot do what they did after Katrina for every disaster. And what we're talking about is they don't have the money to basically build back every community. So when I visited Puerto Rico in December, and I saw how over 1.2 million households had their homes, if not totally destroyed, significantly destroyed. Still about 60% of the population in Puerto Rico without power. Imagine living without electricity for 6 months.
Oh,
and
God. I once had that happen to me for 3 days, and it was horrible on the third day.
Well, and see, what I'm saying this for is, fortunately, they don't have a winter like you do in Minneapolis, but they're still facing the fact they can't cook food, and they're facing the fact that they have very little water supply. So, for example, the Red Cross, who we worked with in Puerto Rico, is doing some unusual things. They're supplying an $85 water filtration kit to individuals, but the problem is it cost them $2 million for something like 54,000 water filtration kits. Think about this. They could probably buy 10 to 20 times more of those filters, and everybody on the island would finally have a way to guarantee they can get clean water. But if you take 20 times 2 million, you're at 40 to $80 million just for water filtration, and that's not something the Red Cross has either the funds for or the typical obligation to provide water to people. So there's a lot of issues that Hurricane Maria created, and again, when you look at some of the results, it's a question of what are we going to tell people in the future they can expect? You know, what's going to be the normal recovery? And if it can't be done because the government doesn't have enough money to do this, then you've got a sort of a significant issue for the whole country to deal with. You know, what's our expectation? What is FEMA really going to be expected to do?
Yep. Well, as I recall, didn't Carlos send a bunch of his cooking cans with you down to Puerto Rico?
We did. We had 1,000, and they said they'd love to have more, and we're trying to raise funds for that now. And the challenge is, again, what's going on in Puerto Rico. We think of that as a long time ago now because it's 6 months, in the rearview mirror. But they're probably going to be dealing with recovery for at least 5 to 6 years. And for many parts of the island, they may never recover totally. So, if you said, and this is a small, I say small, it's not a large island. I think it's the equivalent of Connecticut. So for most people who are all over the U.S., they're not going to be thinking that this is an issue for them to keep dealing with or to keep thinking about. So this is an example of how disasters can be life-changing for not just one or two families, but for, in this case, a commonwealth that is kind of considered to be a possible state in the future. And again, whether this affects the interest of those people in becoming an American state is probable. They probably are going to look at this differently if they don't see a full recovery with the help of the federal government.
Yeah, and Puerto Rico started off in a poor financial condition before the disaster.
You're right. And, it's interesting, and this is something we're going to be talking about at the conference. What are the expectations of people in Puerto Rico, and what are the expectations of all Americans? What do we want if we said that we have a bad hurricane this year in southern Alabama, along the Gulf Coast? Would we expect to do no more than what we're doing in Puerto Rico? And, there's a difference when you're dealing with an island because everything has to be shipped there via a ship, versus things can be brought to Alabama and Florida on a interstate highway, which is much easier. So, again, how and what we deal with future disasters is part of what we want to talk about at the conference in April. And I think that for those listening in, if there's an executive who says, we have a concern or we are interested in helping, we would love to have you join us for the spring symposium at the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta and be part of the CEO network that, Steve, you chair.
And I would add to that any CEO for sure, or any senior leader at any organization, if you think you can't be or won't be affected by these issues that Safe America Foundation takes on, you better think again, because any day an active shooter could probably get in your building. Any day a disaster could strike to wipe out half your supply chain. And so it's, you really should need to be involved in this and have a general awareness and some training and action plans to be prepared for it.
You're right. And the funny thing, Steve, about all of these major issues today, I think that people at the C level in the past would have assumed that if they had good managers, that they could rely on, say, an HR department or risk managers to take care of these things. But increasingly, when there are dire situations, you really have to get the CEO involved, because it's up to the CEO, usually if you had to go beyond a budget, or if you needed to do something immediately, not waiting for a month or a weekend to pass before you make a decision. And I remember one of your predecessors in our CEO network, a gentleman out of New Jersey, Hugh Welsh, told me the story of what it was like for him during Sandy in the New York, New Jersey area. And he was questioning how and what to do. And he said he called his father, who survived 9/11. His dad was in the New York Port Authority and worked out of one of the Twin Towers. And fortunately for him, he was able to get out of the building and survive. So after the Sandy incident was hitting the New York, New Jersey area, he called his dad and said, "Dad, what do you think I need to do? I've got 400 employees in an 8-story building. What should I be telling these people? Should they come to work tomorrow, or do I let them stay off for a few days, or what do you tell me?" And then his father said, "You've got a sort of a binder, don't you, on how to deal with business continuity?" He said, "Sure." He said, "Go pick it up off your shelf." So he did. And then he said, "Okay, son, tell you what, throw it in the trash can. You're going to learn how to deal with this emergency out of the seat of your pants. It's not going to be something you'd find in a binder. You can just follow whatever it says." So Hugh was very interested in helping get other CEOs like yourself engaged in the CEO network and really discussing these kinds of things from a human point of view of what would you want to do for your employees. And he said it was very important to see how we are trying to take C-level executives and train them to use their own ethics, if you will, as it relates to human survival.
Plus, and I would add to that, and this is my viewpoint, CEOs and companies owe something to their community, irrespective of any particular disaster. I mean, you have to be involved. You really should be involved in your community from a philanthropy point of view and from an educational support point of view, and it's just a natural outreach once you have those connections. In a crisis, it's just a natural occurrence for you to get involved.
Well, you're right. And I really salute what you're doing, because I think Miller Ingenuity is a very good illustration of what any company should do in America. And you as a leader are showing this firsthand, because you've gotten into, as you said, the issues that we deal with that, frankly, you wouldn't have expected to be thinking about human trafficking as an issue you needed to know anything about. But you've seen now how it does relate. Even if it's not in Winona, Minnesota directly, you know how it's affecting the country, and that's really the issue here. It's one of the things that we're trying to do is to educate executives and educate everyone to understand that they should be involved in safety. It's an issue that we're involved in every day in subtle ways, and then there are ways we need to be more engaged.
Well, that's a point well taken and well verbalized and articulated. As we bring this segment to a close, I think you should just tell the story, because I was fascinated when I first heard this, about how you came upon the idea and how you started Safe America Foundation. What was your platform that you're launching off, for lack of a better word, product?
Well, the first thing we did, as you remember, was we had car seats that we gave away to moms, pregnant women who maybe weren't married or were poor. And either way, we recognized that a lot of them did not plan to buy a car seat. And when I, at the time, had still young children, I couldn't believe that the number one killer of infants under 2 were children being catapulted through windshields. And in essence, that was how the majority of 1 or 2-year-olds were dying. In terms of if they were going to die, it was because they were going to be ejected from a car. And it just struck me that this is ridiculous. So we should be able to afford $35 and buy a car seat. And frankly, we worked with Walmart. We did something very creative. We gave away car seats and created a national campaign called Operation Baby Buckle. Used the Flintstones as the mascots. We had a float in the Tournament of Roses parade for 2 years in a row. We created a Flintstones village, and we made safety fun. Steve, one of the things that we've tried to do over the years is not always scare people, but to use some positive theme. Put sugar in their minds. If they think there's something they can do that's good and it's not going to hurt them, then people get more committed. So that's what we did with Operation Baby Buckle, and we're proud that we've continued that approach over the last 2 decades.
And I'll add to that, because I know the story in depth, that show how creative a thinker you are. You didn't just start using Flintstones and hope nobody got mad about it. You got Hanna-Barbera to go along with it, didn't you?
We did, and it was really quite amazing. I was in California, and I didn't know the president of Hanna-Barbera at the time, but I met with the marketing director, and he was so impressed with our concept of the vision. We wanted to save all these infants from needless injuries or death. He said, "You know what? I'm going to get you an appointment. If you'll stay over one more day, I'll get you in to see our president." So I extended my trip, and the next day I was in the office of Fred Seibert. And it was amazing because Fred and I didn't know each other, but once he heard the story, he said, "Len, I've had zillions of people come in here and ask me to do things, but I've never had this kind of an idea that I really am committed to off the top of my head." He said, "I'm going to give you a $5 million partnership, and you can use the Flintstones to promote safety." And it was amazing. We had such great coverage. Millions and billions of people heard our story through that commitment. And I think where we go forward here is if we can take the message of what we are doing today through all sorts of media. With your help, this is a great start that we can hopefully continue to work together, Steve, and really get our message out there.
Well, that's great. And one more time, plug your website and your April conference, because I really would encourage every CEO out there listening to this to attend to that or send someone.
Yeah, there are several websites, I should say. We have now 6 websites on different topics. So if you're looking for the meeting in the spring, what we're using is springtosafety.org. Springtosafety.org. You can be a sponsor. You can be even on the program agenda if you're interested, or be a task force leader. So it's an opportunity for people to not just, use their ears, but to use their arms and legs and really be an active participant to make a difference in saving lives. So we're excited to have you sharing this, because we're looking forward to having people that are listening and get in touch, be there, and join our team of leaders that really are going to make a difference.
Well, that's great. And, I just would add to that the Hanna-Barbera example is a perfect illustration of what Len was talking about a few minutes ago, about if CEO step up. Only one guy could have made that decision, and he made it right away. And it didn't have to go by committee, and didn't have to, bubble along for months in the corporate bureaucracy. And so if you're CEO out there, make the decision to get involved in the safety conference in April, and with the Safe America Foundation and everything they do. And the other thing that I would add is you want to make sure that you're keeping up on the trends in industry and in business. But if you want to know how to be innovative, call Len Pagano up and ask him how he was innovative and how he disrupted an entire industry. And if you're looking to be a transformational CEO, call Len, get involved with Len, and he'll show you how. So, Len, I just want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been a fascinating discussion, and I'm sure we'll get plenty of feedback and plenty of hits on your website.
Oh, listen, this is great, Steve. I appreciate your leadership, and thanks for your commitment. It really means a lot to me.
Well, it's my pleasure. Have a good day.
You too.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
You've been listening to Transform, Ignite, Disrupt. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit StephenLBlue.com.